Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sangham namasami. So today is the full moon of January. It's the Upu Saturday. And the monks and nuns, we recite our precepts and we just reconnect with our commitment to Sila, Esek. So this is something we do, as most of you know, fortnightly, following the cycles of the moon. So it's, you could say, one of the, central aspect of monastic life has to do with developing sila. And when we talk about developing sila, it seems to be removed from developing the mind. Sometimes we don't always associate maybe sila with meditation. We separate maybe sila, samadhi, panya, ethic, meditation and wisdom, and not realizing that if there is no mind, there is no action by body or speech. So where does your action and your speech come from? If one really asks oneself, deeply, they're coming from this mind. Of course, where does the mind come from? That's another story, but you can always trace back your actions or your speech back to your mind. The world that is created through, one can only trust through these causes and conditions. Nothing happened just by chance like that. Also, the origin of our causes and conditions seem to be pretty, not always easy to discover. We just know that things happen. We have often a hard time to trace them back, to find out how on earth did I end up there, or how on earth did this happen to me. So this commitment to ethic, it's so important. Ultimately, I don't know what happened ultimately, but certainly on the conventional level, let's talk about the conventional level. How do I get on with my fellow friends? How do I have a life that is actually pleasant, just pleasant, not necessarily transcendent, but just having a life that is free from harming others, harming myself, free from from the repeating again and again actions and speech that keep sort of ripening into misery. So the connection between sila, the mind, where the causes and condition begins, break into speech and action, it's really a very important point, a very important aspect of our life, because every human being is, all the great teachers have said that. I'm not going to quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama because we've heard it many times. All human being wants to be happy. There's no human being that really committed to misery and unhappiness. We all want to be happy. So when we embark on this path of practice and find ourselves redetermining our precepts, it has a profound impact on ourselves. And one of the most immediate result of this is like our mind is not bogged down or filled up with a lot of what the Buddha talks about. He calls his mental state regret and remorse. When we have to keep on apologizing to everybody about all the things that we feel we have done. We may not be able to apologize to everybody, but our mind can be very busy just trying to to patch up all the sort of things that happen in our life and we feel unhappy with. And we feel unhappy because, let's say, when we unintentionally or intentionally act on any state that the Buddha categorized as unskillful, akusala, any unskillful mental states breeds unhappiness. Any skillful mental state breeds happiness. Attachment to either brings unhappiness. If you're attached to being good, it means you're still not free, which it means that you're still expecting a lot from yourself or from others. The worst part is expecting others to be good for you. That's when you realize the misery of attachment. But it's better to be attached to goodness than to negativity. So, sometimes we come to the monastery and think, oh, this is really something special and I am going to become somebody special, or I'm doing something really extraordinary or amazing. But one of the side of this life that is defined monastic life is the fact that we have a training in sila, which is a prolongation, you could say, of the mind and meditation training. As I said, there is no movement of the body or speech unless the mind moves. So it is very useful to have a mirror of our mind just by the way we, hear ourselves speaking or hear ourselves or witness ourselves acting. It's just a good mirror, isn't it? If we didn't have that, we would have a harder time to maybe find out what's going on in our mind. And there is a catch somewhere. There's a little catch because we may suffer by the content of our mind. We may certainly feel unhappy with it. But the bit that really gets us is when we are seen by other people. Have you noticed? We may feel kind of a bit nasty and awful and critical and negative inside, and that doesn't feel very pleasant. But when it breaks into speech or in the way you act, that's when it's much more difficult to realize that it's just the mind. It feels very much like, oops, nobody must see this. Oops, oh, that's bad. The judging mind start ticking in. Oh no, it's not me, it's somebody else. Oh no, it's somebody's caused it. No, it's not. Or oh, it's terrible, it's me, I'm awful, I'm this, I'm that. So we create a lot of self-identity with, when the mind is seen in our actions, in our speech. So, one of the beauty of being on a retreat is that we can be silent, actually, completely silent, and just deal with what's going on in ourselves without having to be too disturbed by, the heedlessness of our mind. Our action, our speech are very excellent teachers for us to really see where we are at. We can look quite good quietly, thinking the most miserable things. We still look pretty good. But when it comes out in our action, speech, then it's more embarrassing. It's more, we become much more self-conscious. And this self-consciousness, isn't it amazing how much we, are identified with who we think we are. We're so incredibly identified with that. We can spend like 2 or 3 weeks watching our thoughts coming and going, and it feels very satisfactory to be able to see the anicca of our mind. But suddenly, when the self-consciousness, when the sense of self kind of pops up, that illusion of self pops up, don't we have a hard time to actually make peace with it? So meditation can help us to really see that. I don't suffer myself, I notice, when things go wrong, but I'm not involved. I don't suffer. I don't have any suffering about that. I mean, I may be empathetic or maybe sensitive to the suffering of others, but there's a part of me that feels very free. But you notice, if you have, unknowingly or knowingly or intentionally or unintentionally, sort of done something that caused the suffering, just even a minute little thing, suddenly the sense of self is very strong. It's like, it's me, I've done this, or shouldn't have done that, it's terrible. Or it's okay, or you forget about it, you pretend it's not happening. So that identification with self is really difficult to handle. Because it's kind of, it's part of the mind that is, terribly frightened to be seen. To see oneself at that moment is really, it's tricky. That's why I call my mind myself a sweet liar, because it is, that's when the mind lies at its most, Oh no, it's not me. I haven't done this. No, it's somebody else. So a lot of what our meditation retreats, our meditation periods, our training and meditation and our developing the mind through meditation is just to enable the mind to be calm and to be strong and steady. To be able to just to be able to sustain the capacity to be present without being shaken by all the things that manifest in ourselves. When you do the practice of meditation, it's a way of just leaving behind the past. Even if the past keeps coming up, it's less sticky already. If you're involved with the past, then it becomes very sticky. But if you just observe it, it's less sticky. It just comes and goes and comes and goes. And you can be, it's not that difficult to be an observer of the mind. It's not that difficult to be a witness. What is much more difficult is to witness the bit that is not so interested in witnessing. That gets suddenly kind of completely entrenched into a story or into a belief system or into a me stories, Suddenly you become you get grasped by this me story. And that is much more difficult to see the anicca at that moment or the emptiness of it all. And there is something about us Westerners, educated and so, that make us think that because we think about it, because we know intellectually about things, about the Dharma, about the Buddhist teaching, we know it. And that's probably one of the main obstacles to actually deepen our practice, is thinking that because we think about it, we can remember it, we can actually, quote things, we can, be quite impressive at some level intellectually. We have the illusion, we know what we are thinking about. And that is an aspect of sila, is bringing you back to reality here and now. It's like you may have read many books about the compassion and the 4 Brahma Viharas, and you may have done many tons of retreats about this or that. You may have read lots of books, But when it comes down to really living life with other people, that's where the actual, the kindergarten work starts. That's where you start graduating from year 1 to, class. The sort of. I can't remember how you classify classes in England, but anyway, year 6. And that is a test, that is a test. We have in our practice altogether the stability of the mind that comes from practice, the strength, the clarity, the peacefulness that is established when the mind is disentangled from its stories. And as soon as you go back into, leave your cushions and go back to anywhere, the kitchen or the monastery, anywhere in the monastery, start interacting with others, you will notice our relationship to the sense of self, which manifests all the time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with self. Like a, well-known teacher in Thailand said, Buddhism says, people talk a lot about, Buddhism, there's no self, but actually each moment there's a self popping up, Self pops up all the time, different selves. And our relationship to that self is often not particularly nice. We don't particularly like ourselves, do we? You noticed? I'm sure I have plenty of moments where we quite enjoy ourselves, but it's good to notice that, during the retreat when we are here, or this kind of relationship, which is not particularly ethical sometimes. It can be quite tendency to be negative and critical and unkind to ourselves can be quite strong. The tendency to think we should be different, we should, kind of being a hard schoolmaster towards ourselves. And when that doesn't work, then we just want to maybe feel depressed and want to give up everything, We feel disappointed with ourselves. So this tendency to be hard on oneself is just a bad habit. That's all. It's just a habit. But it doesn't work very well, does it? Have you noticed? It's different between trying to be hard on ourselves and trying to understand ourselves. Understanding is not being hard about ourselves. Understanding is bringing tapping, touching, contacting, moving towards just allowing the wisdom of the mind to do the work. Wisdom, not hardcore schoolmaster or schoolmistress, with a stick on your back. But the wisdom, the understanding of ourselves. And, I'm not a scientist myself, but if you study something, you noticed it takes concentration, it takes attention, it takes very calm mind, it takes something very focused, and very, very present to study anything. So when you study the mind, notice how you approach it, whether you give yourself the space just to listen or to hear the voices of the mind. Because there are very insightful voices there, a lot of hints and a lot of signs that can help you to understand why you do things in a certain way and why people respond to you in a certain way. Why is your mind crowded with thoughts and exhausted? Why your body is doing this or that, Sometimes we don't always give ourselves a chance to have enough space to listen to the mind as it is. Just plain and simple reality of the mind as it is, because we're still filling it up with stuff, We're still filling it up, reading. We're still filling it up, looking at the computer, reading things on the computer. We fill it up with things that basically doesn't give us a chance to listen to anything that's below that. And yet, that's when consciousness begins to relax a little bit, when it's empty for a while. It might not be empty himself because you're not, enlightened yet, maybe. Not an arahant yet. But it's certainly empty of the tendency, the habit to attach, to cling to things. It's empty of clinging at that moment, And when you stop clinging to things, it's very relaxing. It's a little holiday of your heart, That's why retreats are so helpful, They give you a chance to stop grasping. You might be grasping for 3 months endlessly, but at least you're given the opportunity at that moment to just not, I spend time when you witness, you're not grasping, you're witnessing only. And the magic of the present moment, I like to bring back the sila and the magic of the present moment, because everything we do at the precept level is to enable the mind to have the power to be here and now. So we don't stop drinking, and we don't stop lying, and we don't stop doing things, unskillful, to become a persona of skillfulness or an image of skillfulness in ourselves. This is happening so that the mind can be freed from, too many unpleasant memories, too many unpleasant. It's like remains of memories that we don't like, that we find painful. So the practice is at that level, but also the practice has this, if you're really keen on this, then you will realize that each moment is completely fresh, each moment is completely new, and each moment is completely able to free the mind. One moment. And if you add one moment to another, to another, to another, with that kind of complete freshness and complete ability to live without yourself for a few minutes, not only you realize you survive very, very, very well, completely well looked after, but you feel a bit lighter as well. It's amazing, isn't it? You feel a bit lighter. Suddenly, I did not need that me to carry on my life. And it takes me to a place where it feels a bit lighter, a bit happier. I don't have to carry my old miserable memories, And this is an amazing ability that we all have. Everybody has that. But as you pay attention, when you see attention to the mind, you begin to see this insistence of delusion to bring back again and again and again old stories, again and again old stories of me, and again. It's just amazing how it keeps wanting to be revived, so to speak, Like the mind is so insisting on reviving the past. Incredible. It's interesting, isn't it? How much we feel that without the past, without reviving this past, or with letting it be revived again and again, then for some reason we feel it's right. But the past really is not revived if we don't do anything. So what do we do to revive the past again and again? Ask yourself, who is reviving the past? It's interesting, isn't it? Who keeps reviving, recreating the past again and again, isn't it? I don't give you an answer particularly, but I know for myself, I know what to recreate the past. But ask yourself, who is insisting of bringing back old me's to deal with present moment, fresh moment experience, which is completely new. So we have now the opportunity during this time to do something which is so incredibly rare, is to have all the time in the world. I'm talking particularly about the monastics, but also the lay support group here. You have so much more time than you would have in your normal lay life in many ways. Some of you are working maybe full time. Some of you are, doing a lot of other things, beside work as well. And so, you have, it's not just the free time, it's more the whole approach to life here. The whole approach is now whether you're in the kitchen or in the toilets, cleaning the toilets or meditating on the cushion, it's always developing one's meditation. It's not nothing else. So this is what I mean by having a lot of space. It's like everybody is encouraged. We don't have like a time and say at this time, we do have time, but there's a spaciousness definitely that if you can't do this at this time, you can do it later. There's not like this intense pressure that you have in a work situation, where you get paid and so on. That intense pressure, which is very stressful as well. So here you have the luxury of, a place which is not pressurized by, a lot of agenda. I mean, I'm not saying the kitchen is not a pressurizing space. You don't have to get the meal by 11, but there's still this whole approach, meditative approach, which takes you back again and again to remembering here and now, present moment, here and now, fresh moment, here and now, beginning again, here and now. Isn't it amazing? Somebody's been maybe insulting you, telling you something you didn't like, has been, you felt they were nasty. They may not be nasty, but you felt they were nasty to you. And then you realize, in the here and now, what's happening to me? How is this affecting me? Who is hurt? You can talk to yourself in a way that enables you to take again refuge back into the present moment, instead of being off tangent and say, oh, she did this and he did that, and we shouldn't do this and they shouldn't do that, and blah blah blah. It's so easy for the mind to run off again into the past. So the strength of your mind is not about, becoming the most concentrated jhana person in the world. No, I don't do jhana particularly myself, so I don't have that problem. It's not to become the most kind of powerful mind. It's a mind that is able to say no to delusion. No. The mind is off tangent again. Da 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 da. No, now, here now. But it's not something that you can do straight away like that, because it's like going into another world, isn't it? From and then no, I feel repressed. Oh my God, I feel pushed down. Can't do that. Gotta lift the lid and say no, go back into me. No. Again and again. It's amazing, isn't it? And to be honest, it's an ongoing work. I don't think that me sitting up here, I have got it right. It's an ongoing discipline, ongoing reminders of where is the true refuge, where is reality here and now. Where is your mind here and now? What is happening here and now? Who is creating problem here and now? Who is creating the me that I believe I am here and now? It's interesting. The question is much more interesting than, having a fixed answers about these things. But the question is it's like poking your mind. It's like bursting a bubble. Who is thinking? Who is doing this? Who is? You're like putting a little needle in that bubble. And the more you burst your bubble, the more you'll find that you are actually standing in reality rather than in bubbles. Don't we like our bubbles though? Anyway, look at the kids. They do bubbles. They love blowing bubbles of soap in the air. So much more pretty, isn't it, our bubbles? Some of them, not all of them. So, I also like to share with you the fact that today is the last day before tomorrow. And it's the day when we celebrate Luang Por Chah, and I've been a number of times at the ceremony in Thailand of Luang Por Chah. It's about a week to 10 days, I think, before the 16th, when thousands and thousands of people actually gather at Wat Nong Bapong and meditate for all day and maybe all through the night. It's quite powerful. Sea of devotion and love, of peace, and of incredible kind of something very magic, very, very magic. So I just suddenly had this kind of memory of that as I was wondering what to say tonight, and I wanted to share that. This. I wish you could witness it one day, because it is something completely unique the love and the a devotional kind of love towards Luang Por Chah, and it's just almost indescribable, really. It's so powerful. It's a powerful softness of this immense love that is, that Luang Por Chah has generated throughout his life, and it's just an incredible energy that seemed to wipe out all problems, wipe out all miseries of the mind, and even give you the energy to sit there for hours, because your mind is not there. You find yourself free from the mind for a few hours. It's very nice. And it's just a joy. I was there in 92 when Luang Por Chah's funeral, and I have memory where there was even more people than at the time, and for 10 days we meditated every night there. And the memory of the midnight bell when he was going to be cremated, and the stupa, the beautiful big stupa in which the coffin was there, and had a beautiful kind of lots of mountains of kindlings, it was like wax and all kind of things, but it was covered in wax, and it was ready to catch fire and for Luang Por Chah to be cremated. And then suddenly the whole chedi, all the monks were sitting around in circle around the coffin, and then suddenly the firemen who had been there for 10 days doing nothing maybe thought it'd been kind of nothing was going to happen. At that very moment when they lit the coffin, the whole chedi caught fire, and all the monks had to run out of the chedi, and we spent the next few hours just mopping the stairs with the water and the we were not quite sure we were mopping Luang Por Chah's relics or bones or the fire. I mean, it was like really bizarre, And so that was, everybody of course thought that was the last joke of Luang Por Chah, to have this whole big hoo-ha turn into this disastrous kind of disastrous event when the whole thing catch fires, all the beautiful columns in the stupa became completely darkened by the smoke, and the paint went off, and the stairs were covered in dust and what do you call that? The ashes and so on, and everybody panicking and so on. So that was 92, I think 92 or 93? 93? 93, that's right. And so since then, of course, that has continued every year, and it's very special. And I'm glad that Ajahn Amaravati can celebrate that tomorrow with us and speak more about that. And I wanted to say to Mac, who had a little note for me to dedicate the chanting tonight, Mac, it will be dedicated tomorrow, even more auspicious with Luang Por Chah. So I just like to end with wishing you good, wonderful continuation of the retreat, and just appreciate that that this wonderful teacher has had such an amazing impact on all of us by this incredible wisdom which cut through, mountains of delusion. Whenever we read his books or we hear his teaching, and one of the things that I remember is that, there's many things I remember, but one of the things that I find helpful for us idealistic, Westerners who tend to think very highly, but hasn't yet, enable ourselves to rest, to let the rest of ourselves catch up with our intellect. So our intellect is refined and bright and elegant, but the rest of our mind, it has not been touched for some of you yet, maybe, I'm not saying it's for sure, but so to be able to integrate all the levels of our body and mind into the practice is what this retreat is about. And to remember what Lumpur said about, the practice is about, failing a lot of the time. You don't get it right, and I never remember the exact percentage, but maybe like 80% or 85%, you fall off the edge, you don't get it right. And the rest of the percentage, you get it right. So, the hardest part in our practice is that to start again, to begin again, begin again. The whole house is falling on you and you begin again. The whole world is telling you you're an idiot. Fine, you feel the pain, you feel horrible, you feel terrible, but then if you can get through this, you begin again. And when you've done that 2 or 3 times, the world is much less frightening, because you begin to see that the world is quite, you can navigate through the world without too much fear. By the world, I mean all the things we fear most, like being really downtrodden, being, not appreciated, being unloved, being criticized, being all that, at some point, if you've gone through 1, you can go through 2, through 3, and you survive quite well. It's not the end of the world, but we need some good conditions around us to have that kind of strength. It's not easy, to be able to get confident in the fact that we survive delusion, basically. We survive the ending of our delusions with the ending of our pain, the ending of our suffering. I'm not saying the whole of it maybe yet, but we survive, we don't have to be intimidated by delusion, And so that's one thing that when I hear it from Lumpur Cha, I say, wow, isn't it amazing that we have somebody who can remind us this? Wow. And when you hear Lumpur Cha's teaching, it's like something in us it resonates at a level where you just trust. I was going to say trust a guy. You trust the person, you trust him for some reason. You have faith. Faith kind of arises. For me anyway. Maybe if old Joe said that, I might not have the same faith, or old Mary, if she said that, I might not kind of have the same kind of, yeah, of course, something in me just suddenly got integrated. It's like, oh yeah, I can fail. Oh yeah, I can't get it wrong. Oh yeah, I can be stupid and start again. Oh wow, yeah, I don't have to be completely, I'm going to get rid of my anger forcefully and, with nasty means, I can understand it. I'm given the permission to understand delusion, not to kind of try to be somebody without it,